Brothers, welcome back to another episode of the Rising King Show. I've got my brother Dino here today. Good to have you in the house, my man.
Hey.
And a special guest. Who is this special guest, my friend?
My partner in crime, actually. She's, they say there's a saying, behind every good man there's a powerful woman, an even better woman. That's Nick. That's Nick and my life.
Oh, wow.
Welcome to the show, Nick.
Give me goosebumps. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited and honoured to be here. So, yeah, thank you.
I'm pumped to have you here. And the reason for that is I've known you for maybe 2 years now?
3 years,
3 years?
yeah.
And what I love about you is driven, high performer, and then you've got this other side to you, which is like the very deep, meditative, grounded side. And that's what today's show really is all about, which is this notion of performance, but how do we drive performance without burning out?
Yeah.
And I think what a better person to have here to support on this conversation than yourself, who, runs Dino's successful business, which we'll say is thanks to you. And at the same time, you're driven, ambitious, you're over 50 and you're crushing it in life. You've got this calmness about you. So what I'd love to start with the three of us is a conversation like, what is high performance? Like if we actually, like we had a bit of a conversation off air before, what's high performance?
For me, high performance is being the best at whatever you do. So winning, being the number one, being the best in every adventure or venture that you take on, no matter what it is. That's what high performance is for me. And being able to do it consistently for the long haul in all areas of your life. That's what it means for me. It's that highly competitive, fierce determination to want to be the best in everything that you do. That is what high performance is for me, and it's how I've always lived my life, from a very, very young age.
Like just driven, ambitious. I like what you said that before, but it's I think everyone has high performance in them.
Absolutely.
Because I do believe how you do one thing is how you do everything. And it's how do we tap into that full potential on a consistent basis, like you mentioned there before. It's not just redline it for a couple of weeks, which I'd like to talk about in a minute, but it's like redline, collapse, break, fall apart, get back up, redline, collapse, fall apart. And that's that whole burnout process, right?
Yeah, and that was me. So for me back, from when I started, even from a young age, I was really, really competitive with sport and skiing and all of that sort of stuff. But getting into my career and my business and business growth and all of that area of my life, for me, I didn't know any other way. So burnout was like just what was part of it. It was like, okay, this is what it means to be a high performer.
So you were preempting burnout? Like you were like...
No, I just accepted it. That's what it was. And that's that constant push until you can't push anymore. And then you burn out and then you just keep pushing to see if you can go a bit further. And that's because I didn't understand, the impact that it was having on my physiology, what our physiology actually does. I'm very into the physiology space. That's my background. So I knew about it, but didn't understand what was really happening. And it was only through a really traumatic period of time in my life, I call it my decade from hell, where I had everything, like, all the shiny toys and the life that everyone would want to live, the money, the house, the job, the car, everything that you wanted, and it was all gone overnight. I lost the whole lot. So it was when the wheels fell off my life that I went into probably the darkest period that I've ever been in, where I had no choice but to stop and recalibrate and figure out, like, how was I actually going to get back up and what was I going to do differently to make sure that all those experiences didn't happen again. And it forced me to go down a completely different avenue in terms of my high performance mentality. And it's where I went into the whole, Vedic sciences and the philosophy around stillness and calm, and the techniques that are thousands and thousands of years old, that have been around for 5,000 plus years, that support the physiology for people like me who are high performers to be able to maintain high performance consistently without burnout. So it's like complete same person, same intention, same drive, same competitiveness, all of that, but now doing it from a place of calm. And burnout is not part of my life anymore. And I don't go anywhere near it. Not because I try not to. It just isn't there because of the other modalities that I've introduced to balance out that sort of fierce ambition.
Yeah. If we go back for a sec to pre this dawn
Yep.
of a new age, and you're in that burnout cycle,
Yeah.
do you mind just sharing for the listeners, like, what's going on there? Like, what does it feel like? Because I think a lot of listeners need to hear this from someone who's been in it and then on the other side now of seeing this different way of operating. Because even myself, for years getting trapped in that modality and still wrestling with it. Like, I wouldn't say I'm completely out of it. Like, I'm not floating around and levitating like my brother here, Dino, who just lives the dream life. I still, I have, the ins and outs of it. But I think it's important to hear for the listeners so that they can actually understand, because sometimes it takes someone to go, dude, this is what it looks and feels like. So they can go, that's me. Like, what was going on there? Like, what did it feel like? How was it showing up? How was it manifesting?
Yeah, it was lots of different ways. It was manifesting as insomnia, severe anxiety.
Just dive a little bit deeper, like anxiety, like worrying about what's going to happen next. Like, where's this next thing going? I got to get here before I can relax and be happy and fulfilled, etc.
Yeah, no, not even that. Like, when in burnout, the anxiety is free-floating anxiety. You don't even know what's triggering the anxiety. It's a physiological feeling. You can't rationalize. You can't see what's in front of you. It's like you've got a veil over your eye. Like in the movies, they put like a veil over cameras to sort of hide, the definition of a person's face. Or you put a pair of sunglasses on that are dirty. You can't. That's what burnout is. You can't see properly. You can't think properly. There's no joylessness. Like, it's like you wake up every morning and it doesn't matter if you're sitting watching a beautiful sunrise, or it doesn't matter what happens. You're not finding any joy. You get severe decision fatigue. That's the one that I still know to this day. If I start to feel like I'm struggling with making a decision, I know it's time to take my foot off and breathe for a minute, because I can feel it rising. So it was very physiological for me, not so much cerebral. It was like physical sensations. It was like, you can't sleep. The anxiety, it was like I had somebody pumping drugs into my system, like I was constantly on speed. I had such, cortisol fatigue and adrenaline fatigue. And how I was highly reactive. So I'm already that. So add burnout to it. And it was like you react at something that is so insignificant because you can't see its insignificance. Your body is so full of all the stress chemicals and the stress hormones that you have no way to see that it doesn't really matter if that lid is there or if it's over there. Like, that's how reactive you become. You bark at the kids for no reason just because you weren't coping. You would be sitting in meetings trying to deal with people and not hearing anything because you were so flooded with so many chemicals that you couldn't even hear the conversation that was going on. And the decision fatigue was a big one. You can't make good decisions. So, and then all of a sudden you've got, what do I cook for dinner tonight? You can't even make a decision to do that. What shirt should I wear? That's when you really know you get into burnout. And they were the things that were really prominent for me during those periods of time. Yeah.
And just to put in context, like, significant role in business that you were playing at that time, right? Like,
very big role.
Fitness first.
Yeah.
Era?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you led the fitness first team, right? Like one of the first
back in
teams,
its heyday. Yeah. I started at that company when there were like 3 gyms, and I became the first international female director for the global brand. And yeah, it was a big portfolio. It was a 3,000 staff and 250 million turnover and massive profit. And, we were the boiler room. Like, we were the highest performing organization in our space at that time. We were unstoppable. And that's the world we lived in. And it was just constant. It was, and the thing about it is it's addictive, right? So dopamine, we know, is the more chemical, the chemical of more, right? The molecule of more means you get a bit of it, you want more of it. And working in that high-performing team of winning and results and winning and results and winning and results, it was just you got addicted to the more. And that plays into the, the push, push, push and the burnout. So that played a big part of it as well.
And if you think back to when you were in that state, a hard thing to let go of, like, short of like what happened, which is like the gift from the universe that like stripped it all away to force your hand to move into something else. But prior to that, is it you're just in this state where it's like you just got to keep hanging on and pushing and pushing and pushing, because was it towards something? Like, can you remember, like, were you striving towards something, or was it you just in this modality of today's just more, tomorrow's more?
It was I was striving to get to the best number one. So I was career climbing the ladder, and I got just under where I wanted to be, in terms of where I was. But it wasn't that. It was always wanting to be the best. I didn't want anyone else to beat me. So I didn't want any other country. I didn't want anyone else to get the role. I wanted to be the most obvious choice for the next step and the next career advancement. And I wanted to be the one that was getting the awards at the end of every year. I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to always shine. And I wanted all the people to work that worked with me in my teams. I wanted them to be the best. So it actually wasn't about me. It was about making them all the best, which meant I was always going to be that. So having such a big responsibility of a lot of people that, who all wanted to win and all wanted to be the best, was what drove me to make sure that if they all won, I won. And that was all it was. It was just I always wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best at everything I did.
And do you still feel that today? Like, you still want to be the best?
100%. I do. Just I just do it differently now. Yeah. And I'm not doing it for accolades anymore. It's not about external recognition for me. It's not about the shiny new toy, and it's not about the cars. And I lost everything, right? So I went from everything to nothing overnight. So for me now, I don't care about any of that stuff, anymore. It doesn't matter to me. For me, it's about becoming the best version of myself every single day, and making sure that every day I'm evolving and I'm having a positive impact on everyone who comes into my sphere. That's my goal now, is that I want to try and pass on all my lessons and all my experiences, good, bad, and ugly. And if I can be a foresight or wisdom for people who are, behind me in their journey, on a similar journey, and I can give them tools and wisdom and knowledge and experiences to help them navigate that, so that they don't have to go through the deep, dark stuff as bad as what I did. That's my mission now.
You hear a lot of stories about men, I'll say men here, who get to that pinnacle, like what you're talking about, like where you've got everything, and then something happens and they lose it all. And a lot of men take their own life. Like they just cannot handle that whole piece. Yep. So hat off to you, sister, like being able to have the strength to go, because I'm sure it was very, like you said, it was the decade from hell. Like it wasn't
easy. There were some days I could trying to get, and I had 2 kids in private schools and I had no money to pay their school fees, right? So it was like, how am I going to, I had to get up, I had to find work, I had to hustle just to make sure I could put food on the table and pay the mortgage of the house that I just bought. That's where I was. So it wasn't easy. I remember a day where my mum came over and, I couldn't get out of bed. And she slammed her hands so hard on the end of the bed and she said, "Get up." And it was like, you know, and I got up and I needed that. And that's what kicked me back into putting all these practices, bringing all these new practices and new techniques and new ways of thinking. And I went deep into study, and I went deep into meditation, and I went deep into a whole lot of other modalities that I needed to get me out. I did whatever I could. It was like, if somebody said you should try this, it will help you, I tried it. I just did everything. And then I found one specific tool that was the game changer for me, that lifted me out of the darkness.
Yeah. And I want to jump on that in a second. There's men listening to this right now who are like, well, I just need to get to this next little bit and then I'll go and do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
we get caught in this cycle of, well, as soon as I get to this pinnacle, then I can kind of shift gears and, you know, do all that. What's your advice? Like if you had to go back to your former self,
Yeah.
in that state that's still driven, still in the good zone, heading up towards this this big pinnacle, like would you say something to them? Like would you try your best to change the way that they're looking at it and operating? Because I think a lot of men think it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lose my wife. My wife's never going to leave. My kids will be fine. They'll get over it, etc. Like I'll be totally fine. My health will never get so bad that, you know, like I have to go on meds or I can't train or anything like that. But I do believe when you see enough of these studies and people out there, and when we're looking at the challenges that are out there, especially for men here, I just focus on them because that's who I work with. But it's like, it's not you're different. It's just a matter of time and how long that timeline is. Like maybe it happens in your 60s, maybe it happens. And imagine going through that type of chaos in your 60s and 70s would be 10x harder than going through it in your like 30s and 40s. Yeah. So to come back, I'd love to know, like, what would you tell your younger self who was going through that? Like, what's your words of wisdom at this point?
My words of wisdom are, gosh, you know, and I do operate like a guy, most like in terms of those modalities, and most of my team are all men, and most of the people I work with are men, beautiful men,
Sitting quiet,
who actually deserve the life that he's living right now more than anyone I know. It goes like this: unsustainable behaviours can't last, and you either make the decision to change them yourself and be on the forefront, or nature's going to kick in and the universe is going to step in and it's going to deliver you the hardest punch that you could ever experience to make you wake up and see that the way you're living is not sustainable for the long term. So the advice is listen to people who have been there and be on the forefront of your change. Don't allow the world around you to be the change that you need to make. You need to be the change yourself and make it first and be ahead of the curve. That's the one thing I missed. I missed the signs. They were there. I can see them all now perfectly. Like all the signs that I were given that I was on a path of destruction were there.
Do you mind sharing what some of those are?
My health was the biggest one. I had 12 operations in 10 years. My health was suffering so bad from the pressure I was putting on myself, both with my training and with my work. My health, that was the number one thing that really was and it's my benchmark because I'm a very physical being.
Yes.
My body, your body keeps score. My body is what I use now to, the warning signs are in my physiology. And that's where they generally are for guys, right? Because we can outthink, as guys, but yet people can outthink the way that we're feeling, right? We can have an feeling, go, yeah, it's nothing, I'm just going to keep going, which is what we do. And my body broke and I still ignored it. I still ignored it.
Like joints,
physically,
muscles.
I had surgery. No, I had surgeries. I was in and out of hospital over a 10-year, 12 operations I had.
Wow.
Yeah, and and even then I didn't listen. So
Just get on with it.
yeah, and then the last major operation that I ended up having was when I broke. That was the breaking point. And that it was at that point that was like, okay, I'm listening, because I was really broken.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, so-
11 of them, I'm all good, and then number 12.
Yeah, like, yeah,
okay,
and that was,
okay,
you know,
listen now.
I'm here. Yeah, and that's when the shift sort of started to take place. But they're the signs that I'd be looking for. It is what's happening in your physiology. Just feel it, like sit in your body and feel what's going on when you're feeling not good. Feel your physiology, because it will tell you. And then also, you know, the other signs with people around you, the way that your closest friends or your family or your kids are interacting with you, you know, and not seeing it, that it was there, but not actually recognizing that they're behaving a bit differently because you're behaving differently, but you can't see it.
Yeah.
So those
Did they
sorts
ever
of
make
things.
any comments around it? Like,
They were
you
too-
need to chill.
No, they were. I shielded them from a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Or friends were friends like, dude, you need to slow down here. Like,
no, because Mum, you got to stop. As she'd say it all the time, you got to stop pushing yourself. You got to stop. Yeah, I'm all right. We laugh about it now. She's like, it took you till you were like 45 and broken to actually listen to me.
how often do you think about it though? Like, how often do you go back to, hey, I don't want to become that person again?
I don't so much anymore. I don't really. That person back then was friggin' awesome. I was unstoppable. Like, truly, you couldn't come near me. I was like Teflon in everything that I did. And I didn't do anything. It was all done without actually me sitting there going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It was intrinsic, the way that I was. But I don't think about, I guess I don't go back there anymore, because that person is still part of me. I've just evolved into a better version of that person now, after, completely dissolving that person when I broke. It was like I was shattered into pieces that you could never have put back together. And so I had to rise from the ashes, the phoenix rising from the ashes. I had to come out as a new version of that person that could sustain the ambition and desires and high performance in a different way for different reasons. So I look back at that with, there were times where it's like, God, I wish I could go back there and, experience that. Like, there were times, but not so much anymore do I think about that. Only when I ski, that's the only time I have the, what if I had have taken the red door instead of the blue door and gone down a skiing career? What would that have looked like? That's the only thing I question, like I think about.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if we now come into current state and you made
Yeah.
this transition, talk us through that. Like, what actually changed from the collapse, recalibration, phoenix rising from the ashes? What happened? Like, what went through that decade through to now? Like, what have you been doing? What are some of the practices? What have you learned?
Yeah. So my degree is in human movement and sort of exercise science, and I've always been a bit of a nerd when it comes to the brain-body connection. It's just been those little passion projects that you have. But I do have an education in it. So I realized it was one day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was suffering from really bad anxiety, and this was when I was in the middle of the decade from hell, but not on the bad side of it, if that makes sense. I was coming out sort of into the being able to put one foot in front of each other. Money started to come in, things were shifting. And she was suffering from really, really bad anxiety, and she called me. And I just said to her, she lived right near the beach, and I said, go to the beach. I said, take a spade. I said, and go down and put your timer on. I said, and dig a hole as deep as you can in 1 minute. And then when you've done that, give yourself a breather, then put your timer on again and do it, and try and dig a deeper hole in 1 minute. I said, just do it. Don't question me. She said, okay. So 2 hours passed. She calls me back. She goes, seriously, how did you know that? I said, well, I don't know. I just know that these things that I used to do and I do now are things that help me when I'm having panic attacks or anxiety. And this is when I was in the middle of it. She said, I seriously feel like a different person. I said, yeah, I know. She said, you need to write a book about it. I went, oh, okay. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I went deep into the science of why what I was taught, these things that these practices and techniques that I was deploying in my own life unknowingly, why they were helping me and why they could help other people. And the research the science was there. It's like, you can't have cortisol and adrenaline running through your body at the same time that you have serotonin, oxytocin and dopamine. So doing something like digging a hole is physical. You're in the sun, so you're getting serotonin, you're getting the release of oxytocin, and doing it timed, you're getting the dopamine hit, which is I want more, so it makes you feel good. So that was one of the millions of different techniques. There was another technique, which was a bouncing the ball technique that I used to do all the time being a sporty person. And I ended up remembering a story my granddad told me. He was in Changi they thought he was dead, missing in action. He ended up not being dead, and they found him. But he told a story about he used to get put in the hole all the time when he was in Changi because he was the one that used to help everybody else and get into trouble. And he stole a cricket ball. They had one cricket ball or two or whatever, and he stole a cricket ball and he kept getting put into the hole because he'd fight with the guards. And I said, what did you do in there? He said, I'd sit, it was you can imagine how small it was. He said, and I'd peg the ball and I'd just count and see how many times I could peg it against the wall and catch it without dropping it. He said, and then I'd just try and do better the next time. And he'd bounce and bounce and bounce until he dropped it and count. And so when I was learning the science behind these practices and then remembered this story that he told me, I'm like, oh my God, no wonder he survived. He was doing things that were releasing the feel-good chemicals in his physiology when he was under life threat. They didn't think he was going to live. And so I went deeper into it. And all of these things that I were doing were all things that were finishing stress cycles, basically, right? So they were tactics. They weren't long-term strategies, but they were tactics that I could deploy in those moments where I was losing it. If I was coming home from work and didn't know how I was going to pay the rent the next day, I have a ball in my car and would bounce the ball so that I went into the kids and I wasn't wound up, and I would have that one moment of clarity, that bouncing the ball, you'd get the feel-good endorphins, and all of a sudden you'd find that stillness just for a minute, enough for you to realise, okay, you're walking in with the kids now, it's time to shift gears, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I went deep into all these tactics and I wrote a book. It's basically called Calm Down Before You Blow Up. Now, these were all tactics that anyone could deploy. There's so many in there. It's incredible. They were the things that kept me alive. They kept me going. But in that last 5-year window of the 10 years, I fell madly in love with somebody I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with her. I'd been single for a long, long, long time after the separation years ago. And it was like, oh my God, I'm coming out of the darkness. And 2 days before we went into the first lockdown, she packed up and walked out with no reason. And that was it. So I went back further into how I've got it all wrong. Like, I completely didn't know who I was. I'd lost trust with myself. It was like I thought it was all gone again. And I was broken. Like, the glue wasn't even set from the first knock. So a really good friend of mine who I had been working with at the time, who's in the fitness industry, he sat down with me and he said, Nick, you need to go and learn this meditation. And I said, I meditate every day. He said, no, this is not the same thing. Please just trust me and go and do it. And I was at that point, I'll do whatever. I was that broken. And I went and learned Vedic meditation, also known as Transcendental Meditation. And it was that was the turning point to getting me to where I am now, which was 4 years ago, just about to qualify as a Vedic meditation teacher. That's all I'm going to do. I want to bring Vedic meditation and this technique that actually game changed my whole life in a way where you sit there at the beginning of it like going as if that's going to work, right? Like that, that arrogant, I know what I'm doing, blah, 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 I already meditate. It has fundamentally changed everything in my life. And I want to bring that into high performance and, into high performance and people in those roles so that they can understand the difference between high performance or long-term sustainable high performance in all areas of your life without burnout.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Where do you feel in that? Like, so in this transcendental meditation over the last 4 years, how do you feel it's supported you to be the person you are today? Like, how does it fit in with performance? Because I think a lot of people, a lot of guys listening, myself included in this, right? Like, we had a conversation off air before. I was exactly where you are.
Yeah.
I already meditate. I don't need to do transcendental. Like, same resistance against it.
Yeah.
And I loved what you shared off air, and I'd love it for the listeners as well. Like, what is it? Like, why is it so impactful? How does it become so impactful for a high performing man or woman who wants to, like you said, crush it in life, live up to their highest potential without the burnout?
Basically, it's the most researched meditation in the world, like scientifically backed. And I want to change the word meditation. It's a technique. There's multiple different sorts of meditation. You've got concentration meditation, you've got breathing meditations, you've got all these different. This is a transcending meditation where you transcend away from everything that's there. You're not concentrating. Concentration meditations are great. All meditation's great. But when you're concentrating, your mind doesn't want to concentrate. It wants to do what it wants to do. So it becomes even more stressful sometimes when you're trying to do those meditations. This is a technique that allows your body to go into such a deep state of rest that it goes into homeostasis or stillness where everything is balanced. And when you go to those places, what happens is it allows your physiology to release the stresses that it's holding, because our body is where the stresses are held. Okay, so this is where we hold stresses, not in our mind, it's in our physiology. So if you think about your physiology like a sponge, with all the holes in it.
Yeah.
When the sponge is dry, you can't see any of the gunk that's in it, right? Which is how how the world is operating right now. High performing men in business, me back then, when it was dry, you didn't feel it. But the minute you get another layer of stress that's added into a physiology that's already full and you put a bit of pressure on it, all of a sudden the stresses start to pour out. And they pour out in the wrong way, right? You get aggression, you get depression, you get violence, all of those sorts of things. What this meditation does is it allows you to tap in to that deep place of stillness, of rest. Like it's been scientifically proven 1 million times over that 20 minutes of this meditation is the equivalent of 2 to 3 hours deep sleep.
Wow.
Right? So, when you start to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day, which is what the technique is, you give the body a little squeeze, you drop into a deep state of rest, you give the body a little squeeze, and it comes out in the form of thoughts, like your body triggers thoughts. So, and then you release some and you feel calm. And so all of a sudden you have this adaptation ability, this ability to be able to be responsive and not reactive, because your body's been in a state of calm that it can handle a little bit of pressure. And so doing this consistently, all of a sudden, I said to you before, it's like you're dipping, it's like color fasting, in India, where they dip the linen into the color and then they put it in the sun and they fade it and it starts to fade away. So the effects fade away. So they dip it again and then they keep dipping it until it gets to the point where they don't have to dip it anymore because it's color fast. That's what this meditation does. It dips you into a deep state of rest. It lets you release stresses in the form of thoughts, which there's a whole science behind it. And then you dip yourself back in go out and take on the day. You can handle anything. You feel good. Your adaptation ability is really high. You can juggle everything. And you don't feel aggressive or agitated or anything. You're just in there. You get into flow. You get into that flow state. And then as the day wanes and it starts to wear off, you jump back in and you do your second one, and all of a sudden, boom, there you are again. You've dropped into that deep state of rest. So you've given yourself like an extra 4 hours of sleep in the day, basically. What does that mean? It means that you can be that person. You can be that high performer. You can do anything you want. You can push that extra push without breaking yourself, because you're giving your body the rest it needs to calm itself down, to release some of the stress from the physiology so that you can handle more of it as it comes in. What's happening in society at the moment is stress is the wrong word. It's stress response is the word we should be looking at, because we're surrounded by stresses all day, right? That's just part of the modern world we live in. It's how we respond to them. What's happening is we're getting stresses coming at us from every angle. The wife, the kids, finances. Well, I should have started with finances, business success, the wife, the kids, everything else, family, aging parents, all of that sort of stuff. It's coming. Driving in the traffic, everyone's driving too slow. Somebody yells at you. You got it coming in thick and fast. What's happening is we're getting a layer. So this comes in. Our physiology is already stressed. So we add another layer, and then we add another layer, and we add another layer, and we're not finishing stress cycles. So we're not getting rid of them as they come in. So they're building up and building up and building up. And then we get this tower of pancakes to the point where the pancake topples and there's burnout. Yeah. What this meditation does is it allows for the pancakes. There might be a few layers, but you meditate and you take a couple of layers away, and then you can afford to add another 5, because you're taking a few away, and then you can top them up. They say one of the research was done in Berkeley University back in the early 1990s, where they were trying to ascertain how much stresses that were coming into people's lives in a day. And they basically said they were coming in with 14 measurements of stress a day is what was the average person was experiencing. And then you go to sleep at night, and sleep gets rid of 4 units of stress. So you get rid of 4, you're still left with 10.
Yeah.
Right? So then you start the next day and you get another 14 if it's 14.
Yeah, 24.
You sleep, yeah. So all of us, this is where the stress layers are building up. What happens when you go into meditation? Every meditation releases 8 units of stress. So if all of a sudden we start to get ourselves, and more often we do it, if you do twice a day, then you're getting rid of 16 units of stress, and then all of a sudden you're not in overload, you've got under, so your body is in that place of calm. So your ability to make decisions, your ability to push the extra 2 hours that you need to push, or to do the extra sale, or whatever it is that you need to be that high performance person that you want to be, you have the ability to do it and the capabilities.
I love what you just shared there. That's the first logical response I've heard around meditation. I think this is the challenge with high performing men are very logical.
Mm-hmm.
We're driven by logic, the numbers, the numeracy, all that sort of stuff. And what you just shared there is it's not just go and meditate for 20 minutes. It's like, well, man, I've got so many things to do. How am I going to make 20 minutes? But it's like, dude, there's 14 units of stress sitting in your bucket right now. If you go and take 20 minutes and do your transcendental meditation, or a form of meditation for that 20 minutes, you can take 8 out of that, right? Then if you do it again this afternoon, more might build up, but then you go and do it this afternoon, and you're at a net zero or probably under. You're coming into the next day where you're -3, so the 14 that come in over the top. And the reason I pick up on that is for myself and for the listeners to go, if there's any doubt on a day-to-day basis, I don't have time to meditate, think through that logical lens of what you just said there before, which is, I agree with you. I think every day there are these stresses that come in and they layer. And that's the thing where it's what's on your mind right now? And it's these 14 things.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, what's on it? Well, now there's 28 things. And then if there's nothing done by it until a burnout or a breakdown, I don't know, like that thing probably stacks up into the hundreds, and then you have a breakdown, reset, clear it all, and then we just go and follow the same cycle again. So I love what you shared there, like around actually being able to remove those layers.
The other, I mean, the sleep was the big one for me as well. I'm I had a bit of a thing. If I don't sleep enough, I'm not going to be okay. And now I don't even think about it, because I know that if I have a night, like last night I had a shocker, right? But it doesn't matter, because I got up at 5:30, I did my meditation, and I was, wide awake. Like it's gone. You don't even think about it anymore. So, where you're not getting sleep at night, this is the greatest solution. But what ends up happening is, the more you do it, the better your sleep gets.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. You don't just get to actually feel rested and catch up on sleep by doing your meditations. It also starts to improve your physiology, so that it's not this big bucket of stress, the sponge full of all the crap.
Yes.
It's cleared out, so when you do go to sleep at night, your body is much more capable of dropping into a deep state of sleep. And so you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, because I think that's, out there at the moment, like the big thing is sleep, quality of sleep rather than length of sleep. And I think there's, a lot of people that push very hard on, you've got to get the right quality sleep. Yet no one's looking at, but to do that, it's not just hop in bed and put an eye mask on and some earphones in, or don't look at a screen for a couple of hours before. I'm sure they all help. But there's this one piece that can actually support you to have better sleep. And granted, there are some nights, man, where the kids are up, wife doesn't feel well, you don't feel whatever it is, and you don't get that high quality sleep. But rather than like breaking down for the next 3 days because you didn't get your best night's sleep, there's this tool that sits there that goes, hey, you can reset this and you can dial in on it.
Yeah.
So would you go as far as saying like this has been a huge game changer for you?
Yeah. If for anyone out there, anyone who wants to achieve greatness in their life and do all the things that they want to do and have this, a successfully holistic life, business, family, friends, everything to do with, this is it. Like, and it's not, you made a comment earlier before offline about, when you've got your one thing and you love it, and then you want other people to do it, and when they say they're not interested, you feel hurt. It's not like that for me. It's just like you've got no idea. Like I'm not the woo-woo person. I'm very spiritual and all of that sort of stuff. But that's not what this technique is for me. This is the technique that will fundamentally change how you see the world, how you operate in the world, and the flow-on effects of that. Like things that you could never, even believe until you actually experience it. And it's just like, for me, if I was in one message, just trust me. And
or even just test it for 30 days. Because I think a lot of men, and I'm bucketing it again, but the dream men, because I fit in that bucket. It's like exercise is the thing, right? We'll bend everything in order to get that daily exercise, because that's in our mind. We're like, that's the reset. That clears my mind. That gets me set up for the day. That gets the adrenaline running. All the pass on effects. And what you're sharing here is there's another tool that's as powerful, if not more, but instead of adding more to the plate, the strain, it's like it's removing. It's almost like the car analogy I've used a couple of times, which is like, we're high performance cars driving around a track, pushing as hard as we can, and it's like, how do we make this thing faster? Oh, dude, you just got to make the engine bigger. You just got to put on bigger tires. You just got to put your foot further down on the gas. But no one's actually stopped to go, dude, take the handbrake off. Like, let's remove the resistance before we start adding power to this thing.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing here is this is the thing that can do that.
Yeah, and I exercise every day. It's a religion for me. It's been my whole life. However, sometimes when we're in those heightened states of burnout or, pressure, stress, that's it does reset you, but it also can elevate your cortisol levels and it doesn't help. So it's the, having the both put together. Like the physiology is the most important thing that we've got. You've got to move it. You got to use it, right? And it's the one tool, like I spoke about all those tactics that I used before I learnt this meditation technique. That was physiology, because the physiology releases the good feeling chemicals and endorphins and gives you the rush, but they're short term. So, the exercise rush that you get and the feeling of the endorphins, it's great, but it is short term. This is the other element that you add that is the long term, sustainable, high performance tactic that will allow you to do all of that without getting to those places of burnout. And I'm not saying you won't feel burnout or you won't feel stress. I'm not saying that at all. What it is that the stress will come in, but your adaptation ability will be, you might feel it for like 2 seconds and it's gone, because your body is in a really good place of calm. So it's not that you don't get stress, it's how you respond to it that changes, because we're always going to have stresses coming in all the time, and it's how you respond to it. And that's the difference.
Why aren't more people doing this?
Because I think there's, stigma around, that whole space. I think there's more, it's becoming more and more prevalent in the world at the moment. Many more people are talking. Ray Dalio, this is his practice. He said this is the one thing that was the game-changing thing that made him the success he was. I mean, there's a million others as well.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, Seinfeld, LeBron. This is his tool. This is the technique. Michael Jordan. Like there's
Meditation or transcendental?
TM, yeah. There's like, I could give you a list the length of my arm of the superstars that are out there. And if you look at what's the one thing they've all got in common? It's they all practice this technique religiously, as a practice, as their practice. They go and, they shoot hoops for 3 hours, and practice meditation. It's part of it.
Minutes, yeah. I'll just switch over here to Dino for a second.
Yeah, I'm here, guys. Yeah. Hi.
Sorry.
That's the quietest I've ever heard.
I know.
I like it.
So good.
Your 2 cents on this, man, because you've been in the space for a while as well, and what impact has TM had on your life?
Well, I'd find it hard to find someone that would argue that I'm probably at a deficit of around minus 1,000 in stress units.
That's an understatement.
So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Just to add for me, on top of what Nick's talked about here, is just like the clarity of knowing your true north.
Yeah.
It's having that something deep inside of you, that knowing that you are going in the right direction. I mean, if you want to know true high performance, it's knowing the direction you're going in. And a lot of high performers actually don't even realize that. They don't actually know the direction they're going in. So I think it's, I feel like if there's one aim for any of the high performers, is be high performing at meditation. Use that, because if the byproduct is high performance in other areas. So I feel like, this, because I've been meditating for a very long time. Definitely for more than half of my life, and I'm 47. So I learned meditation almost 4 years ago now, probably three and a half years ago. And Nick was the one that said, "Hey, look, this is different." I'm like, "Look, I'm good. I had been listening to a podcast, Tom Noel's podcast, Vedic Meditation podcast. I was very interested in the knowledge. But I jumped in and I thought, yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. So when I jumped in, I noticed that Nick said something that was so true a little bit earlier. I felt like it was a technique. It was closer to a technique than a meditation. Because meditation, I feel like there's effort involved. It's like you need to focus on your breath. It's a effortful practice. where what I found to my delight was that it was effortless, and that rather than you are doing something, you are being. And it was an absolute game changer. And then when I was doing it in the first 60 days, what I noticed was the resistance, it dissipated. I used to have resistance around, I've been doing it for over 20 years. I'd still be like, I've got to meditate. I've got to sit down. I've got to sit on the cushion. That slight resistance, obviously when you're in it and you come out of it, you're glad you did. But the difference is with Vedic meditation for me is that you look forward to it.
Mm.
You make time in the day. It is a game changer, as Nick said. I really feel the difference between, especially for people who think they can't meditate.
Yeah. Which I feel is that man who's in that position, logical, and then that's like, hey, there's this technique here, yet it feels counterproductive mentally, because it's like, well, dude, I'm here to get more stuff done, but we're looking at it through the wrong lens, which is like, well, you can get more stuff done at 30% of your current capacity, or you can take a 20-minute, break here or reset, and then you can get more stuff done at like 80 or 90% capacity, which will allow you to achieve more in less time, right?
Yeah, well, you end up being able to achieve more by doing less.
Yeah.
Literally. And as Dino said, that's a really good point. It is known as the effortless meditation. So you get, just for a bit of context, so it's not so mystical, because it's not, you get given a mantra. It's based on a whole lot of things, which I won't go into now. And in Sanskrit, mantra means mind, and tra means vehicle. So it's a mind vehicle. Mm. So you get given this sound, and the sound is meant to be repeated easily and effortlessly. And the mantra, the intention of the mantra is to be forgotten. So that's the whole point. And it takes you away, it becomes so charming to your mind as you start to repeat the mantra that you don't want to think anything else, because it likes it. It feels good because of where it takes you. But the one difference with this meditation is thoughts are good. They're not bad. So this is the difference. There's the whole thing out there is that you're not meant to think and just try to stop thinking and all of that. That's not this technique. It's the opposite. Thoughts are good, because thoughts in our meditation practice are stress releases, which is how I described them before. It's like a bubble, a fizzy bit of you've released a fizz, it releases up, it pops out as a thought, and then the thought's gone. And then all of a sudden you're back at the mantra. And so it's a very different experience. And eventually you get to the point where it takes you so deep into that silent place that there's no thoughts, there's no mantra, there's just stillness. And that's what this meditation does.
Love it.
It's like, yeah, seriously, you can't, again, I just say you just got to give it's an experiential thing. I can talk about it till the cows come home, but it's a game changer. And anyone who is a high performer and a high achiever, it's the one thing, if they were to only choose one thing, exercise or meditation, I'd say meditation first. Now,
I love that.
Both.
Yes.
For me.
Yes.
But if you could only pick one, the reality is you've got 72 lots of 20-minute time slots in a day. You can find two.
Because what I love about what you've shared here today, when it comes to exercise and meditation, is all the men I know, we all rely on the exercise as the thing.
That was me.
So then when you get injured, sick, don't get the good night's sleep and you can't exercise, or the kids have to stay home, they can't go to school and you can't go exercise, what happens? The wheels fall off. Angry, cranky dad, frustrated, pissed off, annoyed. Oh man, I didn't get to exercise today, blah, blah, blah. Insert excuses. Here's a whole nother tool to go, don't sit on a one-legged stool, gents. Get on a multi-legged stool. So if one leg breaks, the whole thing doesn't collapse. Yeah. And I think that's something that I've always been pushing hard on in my own life, as well as in Rising Kings, is like, you got to create this multi-legged stool, so that when one breaks, and it just will, like, that's just life. Like,
Yeah.
at some point something happens that you just don't fall apart. So great segue, because you guys that are out there listening, but the three of us are going to put on a 2-day experience for men, high performance men, business owners who want to take this to the next level, who want to get a taste of what Nick's talking about here. We're going to do this in September at this stage.
October, I thought.
October. Perfect. Even better. I'll put details up on Rising Kings, but what for the listener right now, why should a guy come to this? And this is for you, Brother Dino. This is for you, Nick, as well.
I'll give this one, Dino.
Why should an ambitious, driven man come to something like this?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is imagine the Dalai Lama doing a 350-pound deadlift. Like, I don't think men out there are just wanting to be strong and be the provider. I think they know there's something deeper that had no experience in. And you can almost guarantee, like, if someone they're inspired by was turned to them and said the key secret was, meditation, I think a lot of men would be going, okay, I'm listening to you now, what I need to do. And so with this type of meditation, we believe, I believe certainly, it's the best way to experience it is through an immersion.
Yeah.
Full immersion. Get yourself out of the environment that you're in. Get out and actually come together with a group of like-minded men and experience what it means to go deep within, close the eyes, understand how to meditate. But that's not all about meditation. It's just one small part of the weekend experience.
Yeah. The high performance weekend.
High performance.
Yeah, it's a recalibrate. You can't do it while you're in your own environment because of it. You have to go out of your comfort zone in terms of environment and what all the distractions that are around you to recalibrate. And you've got to get away and be around like-minded people who are on the same mission as you. There's like everyone's got the same intention. They all want to become better versions of themselves. They want to evolve. They want to be the best dad, the best business owner, the most successful, the happiest. Have all the shiny toys. It's not just because that doesn't matter to me so much anymore. Doesn't mean it's like you'll get more shiny toys because you become more successful. So it's about recalibrating, and the whole weekend is about all of the modalities that are going to get you there. That's the technique of Vedic meditation is one of the tools that provides the long-term sustainable high performance, plus the other modalities of the breath work, that Dino does, the master classes that we run, in the knowledge sessions that you're going to run, the programs that we give them and the tools that we give them when they walk away. So it's the full enchilada, man. You walk away with everything that you need to be able to recalibrate and kickstart the next chapter of your high performance journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And just to close out, because why I'm excited for it is because I haven't been to something like this before. Like, you go on meditation retreats, or you go on the physical punishment 48-hour Code Black, or the SAS stuff, etc. Or you go to like a breathwork session, or you go to a cold water immersion. Like, sort of all split up into different things. Or you go to a 3-day business workshop, and it's like whiteboard session, and you work out. What we're saying here is like we're bringing it and condensing it down into like 48 hours of recalibration, which I love your term there, to help this guy go from like, you think you're high performance, bro. Dude, you're operating at like 40% of your true capacity. Let us show you how you can get to 80% in terms of clarity, in terms of confidence, in terms of groundedness, understanding where you need to go, like Brother Dino pointed out here before, but also too giving you the tools to not just, hey, I'm 80% for the next 2 weeks. You go to those workshops, etc., and you feel great for a week or 2 weeks after. Like, I've been to multiples of those, and then you fall back down to your systems and your standards again, versus coming out of this thing with a sustainable, high performance strategy and system to be able to continue on through life long term. Nick, grateful. Thank you for,
thank you.
jumping on here today and
Thanks for the
sharing
airtime. I
that
appreciate
amazing wisdom. It was, and thank you for sharing your truth. You know, like sometimes it can be confronting to just be the open book on here, and you just went straight in there. So
Oh, good.
very grateful.
Not for the
Thanks
Vedic
very much.
meditation teacher. That's right. That's exactly. Just a couple of things before we close out. Just who's it for? Two things that come to mind is if you're the guy that needs a break but doesn't have time, it's for you. It's definitely for you. It's the business owner that needs that break and just knows he doesn't have the time. That's first and foremost. Secondly, if you're looking for in business, what we find is, well, just in general life, we generally have problems. These problems arise, and the problems are subjective. They only are a problem from your viewpoint. If you go to the right person, the problem doesn't exist anymore. And what we're suggesting is, if you're a person that has a lot of problems in your life, a lot of resistance, a lot of blockages, a lot of challenges, this is also for you, because it will give you greater awareness, greater perspective, and that the problem actually disappears because the solution is within you.
Thank you, Brother Dino. Thank you, listeners.
Thanks,
Always
guys.
is awesome, and look forward to speaking to you next week.
Thank you, Brother Ben.
Stay strong.